Okay, so welcome back to our CSS tutorial on selectors. We've already taken quite a long look and an introduction to selectors, why we use them. We've looked at class and ID selectors, but now we're going to remove the inefficiency of our markup, and we're going to get rid of this class here for links, and we're going to get rid of the class we originally had for our paragraph. So I'll go ahead and revert that. So I'm going to say red. So inside of primary.css, let's go ahead and get rid of that, and let's return to here and just explain what's going on. We've got a class of red for each of these elements, and what this does is when this class exists, we colored it red. And obviously, you know, it works, it does what we want, but it's extremely inefficient because we're specifying classes here for no reason. Now let's just assume we wanted all paragraphs and all links to be red. We might not, we might want to, you know, create more specific selectors. Let's go ahead and get rid of these class additions here. Now obviously when we refresh, everything returns to how it was before. I want to go ahead and select all paragraph elements and all A elements, and I want to turn them red. Unusual that you'd want to do this, but if you did, you know, we're just looking at examples here. Okay, so I could go P. Now notice I have got no dot, no hash. I'm selecting all elements with the type P, or all elements that are P, paragraph tags, elements. So I can apply these same styles here, or any style I want. So let's just say I wanted to color them all red, and I wanted a margin on the bottom of 10 pixels. It's just literally anything, it doesn't really matter. Now when I refresh, you'll see that paragraph has now been colored red. Okay, so we've done the same thing. Now let's say what we could do for the A is we could go A and then put some styles in here as well. Okay, you might think perfectly acceptable. Well, this is where we got into grouping you know, selections, and this applies to anything that we're going to talk about from now onwards and what we've already talked about, and that's if elements share the same properties but they're different types of element, we can target them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, which by the way, if I refresh, would color the link red as well. And I can actually give the same, let's just say this margin bottom here didn't exist. I can actually use a comma separated list of either classes, IDs, element types, or anything we're going to talk about in a comma separated list. So I can say P, comma A, and what this is going to do is it's going to target all paragraph elements, and it's going to target all anchor elements as well. But I could also then say, you know, target all elements with a class of red. You know, so we might have a paragraph, an anchor tag, an anchor link, and then we might have, say, a div here, and then I could go ahead and I can give that a class of red, and I could say, you know, some div, refresh, and that's red as well. So we can target, you know, we can group this as well. Which is extremely useful, because if we wanted to create a reset document on our page, or reset CSS, let's say to get rid of all padding from divs, paragraphs, anything, you know, I could just go div p padding 0, margin 0. Okay, so you know, this is extremely useful, the ability to do this, and it saves us a lot of space, it saves us a lot of duplication of code as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but make sure you're doing that if you're finding you're duplicating code. You know, it's something that we should be doing. So we've already learned that we can target classes, IDs, or any element, any HTML element you create on your page, you should be able to target with CSS. So give it a try, go and create some elements that you'd usually create and target it, try and give it some styles. Okay, so we're going to go on to some slightly more advanced things now, and that is things like descendants and child selectors. The first thing we need to do is, well, I'm going to get rid of everything here, so we're starting afresh again. We need to you know, speak about what child and descendants are. They're two different things, but they're sort of similar. You know, it's quite hard to grasp the difference between them. But before we start to actually look at any examples, let's go ahead and explain what they are. Okay, so let's just say I have a paragraph here. actually no, I'm going to create a div. And I'm going to give this a specific class. And I'm going to call this article. Now I'm not using the HTML5 article tag just for simplicity, so don't worry about that. We're going to target this element with the class of article. Inside I'm going to have a header. Then I'm going to have a paragraph. And then within this paragraph I'm going to have a link. Okay, I'm going to have a link at the bottom. So here I'm going to say ahref equals hash read more. Okay, so on our page now, when we refresh, we will have this. Actually, let's go ahead and yeah, we'll keep that as it is. It doesn't quite look right on the page, but it's going to help me explain this child and descendant concept. Okay, so if we wanted to style, say, this header, you might think, well, you know, how will we do it? Well, we can use a descendant selector to select an element within another element. Now, this is regardless of, you know, where it appears, whether it appears inside another element. So let's just say we wanted to target header. Well, let's go ahead and target this. I might as well go along with the examples as we explain. It's going to help. So the first thing we want to do is select the outermost container that we want to target, assuming that this is specific. If we wanted to style all our H1s the same, we would just do H1. But I want to target any H1 within an article. Now notice what I've done. I've not comma separated this, because that would mean article and H1 apply to both. I want to apply to H1s within articles, so I've just said article space H1. Now this essentially means any H1 inside of article, and it can be anywhere inside article. That even means inside paragraph tags inside article, or inside, say, another paragraph tag within this paragraph tag within this article. Okay, so H1 appears anywhere inside article, we target it. So what I'm going to do is, let's look at our current page. I'm going to make a dramatic change to this header just so we know that it's changed. So I'm going to just color this in red. So let's refresh. You see that the header is now red. So we've targeted the H1 inside of article. Now this is called a descendant selector. The H1 descends from article, but it doesn't matter where it descends from. So if I copy this and I go ahead and paste it within this paragraph tag, this doesn't mean H1 immediately after article or immediately within article, not within any other elements. So when we refresh, we get the same style, even though this is now in this header here that I'm sort of highlighting is within a paragraph within article. Now, if we want to remove this, you know, targeting, this sort of very general targeting, we want to use a child selector. So descendant means it can come anywhere within that particular selection or element. A child selector will only be if it's the immediate child of that element. So H1 is a child of article, but this H1 here isn't a child of article, it's a child of this paragraph here. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, I always look at it as draw it out on paper. You know, draw some kind of hierarchy and look at where elements come from if you can't get your head around it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a greater than sign. Now this means a child selector or child, yeah, I guess call it a child selector. So essentially what this means is reading backwards an H1 that's a child of article. Remember, not a descendant of article. Now remember this this styled before. When I refresh now, okay, so let's just take a look at the I think it's because we've got this H1 within this paragraph here. You know, little problem there. Let's just go ahead and change this. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the header, and I'm going to copy the link instead. I think I think we're not allowed that H1. Anyway, let's start again. We've got exactly the same thing here. I'll go ahead and pop that above here. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to target the A instead. Okay, so I'm going to say article A, color red. Remember, that's a descendant selector. So this is a descendant of article, and this is a descendant of article. So when we refresh, we expect to see both of these links, the first one outside of the paragraph, the second one within the paragraph, colored red. Now, what happens if we use the child selector? Now, again, this is a child of article. This is not a child of article, it's a child of the paragraph which is inside of article. So there's a difference with this. So now when we refresh, this link here, which is not a child of article, is removed. Okay, or the style is removed from this. I think the reason that the header doesn't work is, by the way, is a header inside a paragraph tag is not valid. A header doesn't come within a paragraph tag, so I think that's the problem. I've never run into that before, but there we go. Okay, so we've now seen the difference between a child and a descendant selector. If you can't remember them, the best thing to do is load up your text editor, start write some kind of complex document, and try to target specific elements. Obviously, we're going to look at some more advanced selections and things like that, but nothing too bad. It's going to be quite straightforward, as selection is. It's just getting the hang of it. So okay, so in the next part we're going to start to look at a few more bits and bobs, so I'll see you in that part.